The activation of the SecureSense algorithm makes diagnoses that are sometimes unexpected, as in this case the intermittent loss of RV capture. So in this patient we could find some episodes of non-sustained ventricular oversensing recorded in the memory of the device. On the tracing you can see initially a ventricular capture after the ventricular stimulus, but here a loss of ventricular capture, since there is no depolarization on the discrimination channel after the ventricular stimulus. There is then a spontaneous conduction with detection of the intrinsic QRS by the bipolar channel after a long PR interval. So this loss of capture will induce the detection of a short interval at the level of the bipolar channel. This is exactly the same sequence with the second short interval, so you have 2 short intervals out of 3. Therefore, there is activation of the discrimination channel after a warm-up of 350 milliseconds. You can see now that on the discrimination channel you sense correctly the intrinsic activation, but of course there is no sensing after the ventricular pacing, since there is no ventricular depolarization. So there is a discordance between the bipolar channel, where there are some short cycles, and the discrimination channel, where there is no short cycle. Therefore, the noise counter will be incremented by 1 for each fast cycle detected on the bipolar channel, and is never reset to 0, since there is no short cycle at the level of the discrimination channel. At this point, the noise counter is at 5, and therefore there is a recording of a tracing corresponding to a non-sustained oversensing. In the more recent platforms, a noise counter at 10 is required for recording an episode of non-sustained oversensing. In this patient, the programmed amplitude of stimulation was too low, at the limit of the threshold, and without a safety margin. With each loss of capture, a SecureSense alert was recorded. The delay between the ineffective ventricular stimulus and the sensing of the spontaneous conducted activation was longer than the post-pacing ventricular blanking period, and was expressed by the detection of the short cycle on the bipolar channel. Conversely, the spontaneous ventricular event was the only event sensed on the discrimination channel, explaining the absence of short cycles. An adapted programming of the stimulation amplitude solved the problem.